Hello and welcome. This video provides a complete and comprehensive overview of the POBITS system. Whether you are new to POBITS or just looking at POBITS to see if it's right for your organization, this is a great video to watch. POBITS is a targeted solution for background investigators. It organizes your investigation portfolio, streamlines communications with investigation participants, consistently produces high-quality reports and summaries, and keeps investigators on track. It enables a greater caseload per investigator and reduces average time to complete. It also eliminates non-productive work such as printing, faxing, mailing, and waiting. POBITS is a web-based application, and all investigation participants interact directly with the system. POBITS doesn't send anything to anybody other than some email. As the investigator, you manage the case, and then you invite the candidate, the references, the employers, and the landlords whenever you like in order to complete the case at the pace you're taking. Using POBITS, your communication cycle time with investigation participants is greatly reduced. Candidates and references are monitored, tracked, and updated, and POBITS leads them all along the way. Customers frequently tell us that it's not unusual to have a participant complete their questionnaire within 30 minutes of the request. We all have computers and they help a lot. However, I know what you're probably doing now. You have shared file folders, Microsoft Word templates, Excel spreadsheets, and maybe a database. If you tried to explain your system to me, it would take you a little while to do so, and it would take a while for me to learn it and understand it. If I wanted to know the status of a particular case, it might be a little bit difficult. In POBITS, you have a completely structured approach. You will always know the status of a case. You will always know what needs to be done and what is the next step. Investigators and supervisors can find the information they need whenever they need it. POBITS is not a records management system. As you consider POBITS for your organization, don't think of it as such. Rather, POBITS is a system that creates a record. When you complete your investigation, you extract a full background investigation report as a single PDF file. This file contains literally everything that's in the investigation. While the data remains in POBITS for all time and is useful there, the system is really not designed to be a records management system and should not be thought of as such. POBITS is extremely flexible and supports a standard investigation approach. In the real world, you hand the candidate a package of forms including a personal history statement. So does POBITS. The candidate will complete the PHS and all of the associated forms and submit them. You will be notified that they've submitted their questionnaire, and you can go in and review it as the investigator. You may have other interviews with the candidate to go over the PHS questions, and then at some point you may decide to move on and start interviewing references. You can do that by simply inviting them to the system. It's very easy to do, and then you can follow on with personal interviews at your discretion. Later on, investigators and staff can review the comments and the narratives. You can submit it for a review process. You can have that review process and make a final adjudication. There are three fundamental roles in POBITS: managers, investigators, and viewers. Managers and investigators are both investigators. However, a manager has a more expanded visibility and ability within the system. Managers, for example, manage the investigators in the accounts, they manage system settings and things like that. Managers can also see all candidates and cases within the system. An investigator has a more narrow role. They cannot control account settings, and they can only access cases that have been specifically assigned to them. Viewers can see everything in the system and can run all reports. They simply cannot manipulate any data in the system. So if you need a user that has any sort of active role in the system, they need to be either a manager or an investigator. The manager and investigator accounts are paid for. The viewer account comes at no cost, and you can have as many of them as you like. You have to have at least one manager, and if you want, everybody can be a manager, but you have to have at least one. There are a few key business concepts to understand in POBITS. Candidates can have multiple questionnaires, also known as cases or personal history statements. So candidates live alone as entities within the system, and attached to candidates may be one or more cases. An investigator cannot change information entered by a candidate, so that's good for the integrity of the system. And if the candidate says that they didn't answer a question a certain way, there's no argument that in fact they did. There's no sharing of candidate or candidate data between different accounts, and all references can view the candidate's signed and notarized consent authorization form prior to completing their questionnaire. Since going online in 2010, we've experienced very good customer growth and acceptance. Over 25,000 investigations have been completed. We have 25 active accounts. Large accounts include Las Vegas Metro Police Department and the U.S. Capitol Police. We estimate countless hours have been saved. The value proposition for POBITS is quite simple. Save time and manpower, eliminate non-productive work, deliver high-quality reports, know case status at a glance, retrieve data rapidly, and view performance metrics. POBITS is a simple acquisition. There's no capital investment. It is sold as a subscription service, currently at $750 per investigator per year, paid annually. There are no costs for users with the viewer role, and we guarantee no rate increase for the life of your subscription. Bottom line, there are no other costs. We simply don't sell anything else. We do provide technical support, we do provide training, and we do listen and implement feature requests. We simply do them at no cost. The path to adoption is quite simple. We encourage you to schedule a personal webinar where I can show you all of the features of the system and answer all of your questions. Then take a 30-day trial examination. Open up a free account that is fully usable in every way. Some of our customers have even processed active investigations using their trial account. Make sure that POBITS works for you. Ensure your team is ready to accept process improvement. If you want, process actual candidates. Then you're ready to sign up for your first year's subscription. We'd like to start your trial as soon as possible. Okay, now let's take a look at POBITS and many of its features. I'm currently logged in as an investigator, and this is the investigator's dashboard. The dashboard consists of several different lists that you work on for different reasons. I'll show you them one by one. The first list is called Recently Updated Active Candidates. These are active candidates who have ongoing cases who are assigned to you, whoever you are, when you're logged in. So this is your work list of the day that shows all of your cases and gives you access to them. The next list down here is called My Alerts. Alerts pop up anytime somebody does something in the system that would be of interest to you. The most common alert is that somebody has completed a questionnaire, so now it's time for you to go in and review it and move your case forward. All of the alerts that show up in the system also include an email to you into your normal email box. The next list is called People I'm Waiting On. This is the kind of special thing you only get when using a system like POBITS. Every time you invite somebody to the system, whether it's a candidate or any of the references, they show up on this list, and they're grouped by candidate. So Charles and Frank in this list, they are candidates, and everyone grouped within them are associated with their case. These are people who have been invited to come into the system and complete a questionnaire. So the list informs you of everybody that you're currently waiting on. When they turn red, as many of mine are in here, it means that they can no longer help you. They are locked out of the system and they didn't do what they were supposed to do. So now it's on you to go back and contact them and see if you can't move them along through the system. When they're white, as one is in this list, it means their time's not up, you're still just waiting on them. When they complete their task, they vanish from the list and they're gone altogether. So when you log into POBITS every day, one of the things you'll want to do is check this list and see if anybody has turned red and if there's anybody you need to move along in the system. So now let's work with a candidate and cases. As I said earlier, you can use the action button to jump into the candidate record, open the candidate's case, invite them, reset their password, extend them, or revoke them. So let's jump in and look at the candidate's record. The personal information tab here essentially represents the candidate. This is everything about the person. Two things you'll see that are going to be the same on every single investigative area are the status area and the narrative area. The status area has a checkbox where you can check it, which indicates that this investigative area is complete. That informs you and anyone else looking at the case of the status of this section. Then there's the narrative preview. Right now there's no narrative written, but we can also use templates. And so here we would use the update narrative box to open a window to type in our narrative. We can also apply a template. Templates are great and they exist in every investigative area where you can have pre-written text or pre-written outlines of text to help you have draft content that's applicable to most situations. So for example, if I wanted to apply a small template in here, I can pick this one, which I've just designed to have standard male pronouns, and continue. And then it'll apply that template language in here. It's only a little bit in here, but you get the idea. This could be a lengthy narrative and it could save me a lot of typing. The rest of this is record information about the candidate's record, various items there. Then we get into a name and photo. Bear in mind that the only thing you've entered here as a investigator is the basic name and email type information and the photo. The photo would be up to the investigator to upload. Then there's basic questions that the candidate has answered regarding citizenship, legal authority to work, basic stats, and then contact information. So that's the essence of the whole candidate record. So associated with the candidate record is any number of personal history statements. You can see that my candidate has 3. That might not be too unusual. It's probably more common just to have 1. But in the case where a candidate applies and is not hired for whatever reason, then comes back and applies, say, a year later or something, you are likely to open another case. And so the previous case would still be there. And now you have a new case open that you're going to work with the candidate. As you can see, I have 2 that are closed and 1 that's still in progress. I'll come back to this grid in just a minute. We also have supplemental forms, and supplemental forms are an important concept to understand because what you have in your system or in your account is a set of supplemental forms that are unique to your account. You might have 3, 4, 5, or any number of supplemental forms, one of which is probably the consent authorization release form. But if you look at your normal package that you hand the candidate, it includes the PHS, it includes the consent authorization, and it may include any number of other forms that you have. Doesn't matter how many. Once you create a candidate, those forms are copied into their record and they appear right here. And so this is where I have, in my case, 1. But this is where you would have all of them would be in here. Let's go ahead and open one just so you get a sense of that. The form itself is this item right here, which I could click on and open. But more important really is the metadata around here where we have a form name, we have a description, you provide instructions to the candidate on what they are to do with it. The candidate can potentially write a note back in here and if they had difficulty or need to explain something. And then there's a box here that candidates do not see, which is the little checkbox that says display on questionnaires. What that means is that this form will be revealed or shown to references when they come into the system to complete their questionnaires on the candidate. So this is how a reference receives the consent authorization form that you've acquired from the candidate. It is possible that the candidate can download the form, sign it and have it notarized, scan it, and put it right back up here into the system, and it's all good. Some of my customers I know bring the candidate in to sign it in front of them where they act as notary, and then they upload it into the case file. Either way, it's very important that before you start inviting references that you make sure that your consent authorization form is uploaded and is all good, because this is what they'll be seeing. So that's what a supplemental form looks like. And remember that the supplemental form could be anything. It could be another bank of questions that you want to ask that are not in the default personal history statement, or it could be any other forms local to your own organization or your jurisdiction. So there's also notes, You can write any number of notes about a candidate. They can be for any reason, any purpose. They're just sitting there, and they inform you and others about interesting facts or things about the candidate. You also have the access log. So here I can see all of the instances where this candidate has accessed the system, and I can see login, log out, session duration, and the actual IP address that they logged in from. Okay, now let's go back to the personal history statements. These are also known as cases, and in the system you look at, it might say cases here because that's been a recent change. It's not currently published. So here we have 3 cases, and we have one that's in progress, so I'll go ahead and open that case. The case itself has its own little dashboard, and I'll go over some of the features very quickly. First, you see this visual progress bar that simply tells you how far along this case is, and that's measured by the number of these investigative areas that have been marked complete, and I showed you how to do that just a second ago. You can also mark them right here on this form when you decide that they're done. Over here on the right side of the form are just basic elements about the case, which include the position they're applying for. The case number is optional. It's something you can just put on here if that has relevance to some other system that you have. Cases have stages, and the case runs through a number of different stages, 1 through 7, and you can see what they are, and they progress linearly like that. The good news is that POBITS always sets the case stage based on things that are going on in the system. So when the case is first started, it's obviously in case opened status. When you invite the candidate, it's in candidate update status, and so on. So POBITS will set the case stage automatically, except for close. It's up to the investigator to close the case. So it's important to point out the stages here, because stages are important to understanding the motion of your cases throughout the system. Finally, there's a disposition when the case is closed. You can select any of these different dispositions regarding the case, and other parts in here are details such as when it was open and closed, the case duration, and other just case facts, things like that. So that's very quickly, that's the dashboard here of the case file. Then there are the various investigative areas, and I'll drop that menu down, and when you look at them you can go, okay, you see that these are the typical areas in any typical PHS or questionnaire. So let's take a look at one right away. We'll go into relatives. Remember that all of this was completed by the candidate, and we're just reviewing it. So again, we have the standard complete box, we have the narrative preview, and if I was going to update the narrative, I would just click on that box and update it, or apply a template or anything else that I want to do. Now within this investigative area there are subjects, and this investigative area is relatives, so the subjects are all relatives, and they're divided up by parents, spouses, siblings, and children, and they are relations of all types, half and step, and what have you. So when we look at one subject here, I've got James Gibson, who is a father, and you'll notice a red flag button right here, which means that I hit the red flag button on this because of something that I came across in the case. POBITS doesn't do a lot with that. It's just a visual indicator to you that somebody has red flagged something as for whatever reason, whatever it means to you. Maybe it means, come back and check. Maybe it means potential trouble, whatever. So taking actions on this person, you see we can review, which means to open up and take a look. We can invite them, extend them, or we can generate a letter. Using that function, POBITS will generate a physical letter with the questionnaire and everything else you need. This is a workaround for people who just are not going to do what you want them to do electronically. There are still some people without computers or people who refuse to use them, so it's a workaround for that. In most cases, everybody's going to work electronically. So let's go ahead and just review this record. So now I'm looking at the father's record, and here I have a red flag button, which I've checked, and the done button. Again, we have a lot of things that we can mark as done, and it's important that you do that because that keeps you and everybody else right on track, knowing what's done and what isn't done. Here you have a comment section where the investigator can enter any comments you may have about your interaction with this person, or even just based on the questionnaire they submitted or anything else. And everything else here is just the contact data that was offered by the candidate when they entered all of the information. This person, this parent, has things associated with them. They've got a questionnaire, for example. And in my case, I've got more than one questionnaire, and I do that just to explain to you that in this case, the parent completed the questionnaire, and that would be all well and good. And in this case here, I completed the questionnaire because I clicked on the Add New button, I started a new questionnaire, and I filled in all of the information with the parent on the phone. And that's fine. I point this out just to show you that POBITS knows the difference, because it lets me delete this one and it lets me edit it because it knows that I did it. This one up here is committed to the record. I can review it, but I cannot edit it or delete it. So you have two different ways of collecting the questionnaires, and if you end up doing it yourself, the system will know that you did it yourself. Then there are secondary references. And so if this person had provided any secondary references, they would be attached right here, and I could look at them. In this case, there are none, but I'll show you secondary references again in a minute. So then there's an access log like I showed you before, and we can see all of the times that this person accessed the system with login, logout, duration, and IP address. Then we can also present a Google map based on that person's address. Will show us the map of that person's location. So let's go back to the parent here and review that. And so again, I could generate a letter, or I can invite them from out here, but let's just go ahead and close them. So that's what it looks like when you go into a subject in an investigative area. If I went into a spouse or a sibling or a child, they would all look essentially the same. They are different data objects in the system. No matter to you, they still represent what they represent. Notice also that out here I can invite all parents, which would be everybody in this list. I could do the same with spouses and siblings and children, and I can also invite everybody on this whole page. So if I think that everybody on here is ready to go, I will hit that one button, and that'll invite everybody on this page. And that's a great time to point out another great feature in POBITS, which is out here from the dashboard. If I go to actions, I can invite all contacts. So imagine you're at the point where you've completed the candidate has completed their questionnaire, you've had an interview with them, you feel that everything's ready to move forward, and you're ready to invite all of the references. So one button will do the job. You click that button, your people I'm waiting on list is going to fill up, and you're all set with that. So let's look at another investigative area real quickly, references, just to show you that it's really the same. Again, the narrative preview is just that, and I've just got a lot of junk data written in there because it's my test account, but that just shows you that there's a narrative here, and you can go in and edit it. Same thing now, the subjects within this area are just personal references. These are all added by the candidate. They can be red flagged just like you can in other areas. And then you have secondary references. So when you complete the process where you've invited all of the references, you may end up with a number of secondary references down here, because when they come into the system, one of the things they're asked is whether they can provide other references that might be helpful. If they do, they'll show up down here. Alternatively, you can also add one here. So if you come across other secondary references in the course of your investigation, you just add them. Again, we've got the invite all buttons down here for all of those, and we've got the invite all on the page. Again, very useful. Probably the best way to do this is to use that one button out on the front that invites all of your contactable people. Okay, and now let's do one more thing in investigative areas. Let's look at the legal area. It's a long and complex area, but it gives me the opportunity to show you some great other features. So POBITS is a tracking system, so there's places to track records, checks, and a few other things. Then we get into sort of the essence of the questionnaire. In this particular section in legal, the candidate is asked a question: have they ever had any incursion with law enforcement, is the bottom line. If they say yes, then they must provide all of them down here, and in this case I've got one. So let's open it up, and here the candidate has provided a description of some incursion that they had with law enforcement, approximate date, where, who, what, when, where, some basic questions on if they're arrested and charged, and then they provide an explanation of this incident, and that's all fine. They don't see the area below here, which is where you go in to adjudicate this issue. So the candidate has revealed that they've had some sort of incursion with law enforcement. It could be anything from simple questioning to arrest or what have you. And here's where where you're going to deal with this. You're going to look at the information the candidate provided. You're going to get more information when you interview them, and then you're going to provide an investigative dimension and a final mitigation, or I should say adjudication here, and mark it as such. And so this thing that we just looked at there is what we call a concern. And so let's look down a little bit further on this list. You can see the candidate has the typical questions you see. These are all general detected acts. And anytime when they answer yes to any of the questions, they have to provide an explanation. So now we go farther down, and this is the undetected acts area. And here they have indicated yes, that they did at one time perform indecent exposure, and so they also had to explain that. That question is UA 113, and so down here there's an explanation to UA 113, and we'll open that and review it. Notice that this looks a lot like the other thing that we just opened about the arrest. It's similar, it's not identical, but it's similar, but it's still a concern. So the fact that the candidate answered yes to a question creates a concern. The fact that the candidate revealed an incursion with law enforcement creates a concern. And there's a number of other places in POBITS where the candidate reveals something, answers yes to something, or anything like that, and those create concerns for us. So this is a similar kind of a form as before, and you simply, as an investigator, will review this and adjudicate it. So now we've looked at 3 of the investigative areas. Let's take a look at a bit of a wider angle here, and we'll close this form. And now let's just assume that we've put a candidate in the system, which was nothing more than about 4 data fields: name, email address, and a couple of others. We invited them. That was a click of a button. And then we got an alert that said their questionnaire is done and has been submitted. So here we are. We open up the questionnaire, and probably the first thing you're going to want to do in POBITS is use the concerns button here, because here's a great benefit that you get out of having an electronic system, that POBITS can now take a look at the entire questionnaire and inform you, here's all of the problems in it. And so remember what I just said. Concerns are created when a candidate answers yes to anything. It has to be explained, and the explanation creates a concern. If they list any other number of things, like they list arrests, citations, traffic accidents, convicted felonists, friends, or anything like that, these things all create concerns. So at this point in the investigation, you've done very little work as an investigator to get them into the system and get this questionnaire answered. And now you can come in here and you can click on this list, and you can see, based on no footwork, based on no real work at all, based only on what the candidate is telling you in their questionnaire, you can see a list of concerns and probably whether this candidate even warrants going any further. So here we have these concerns, and for example, under arrest, convictions, and contacts, we have one, and we looked at this one just a second ago. So this is that concern that we were just looking at a second ago. As with so many other things in POBITS, green means done and red means not done. So you, as the investigator, when you look at this list, you can see you haven't dealt with all of these yet. The idea is to get all of these turned to green, which at least means you've addressed the issue. Green doesn't mean it's okay. It just means you've addressed the issue. There may be an issue on here that stops the investigation altogether, but otherwise the idea is to get to green on all of these, make them all done so that you can move on to the next phase of the investigation, which is dealing with references. Our vision is that once the candidate has submitted their questionnaire, you would go over all of these issues with them in a more detailed interview, seeing what they said, and like all good investigators, trying to needle out of them a little bit more that was unrevealed, see if they've been forthright and truthful about the whole event, and see if they remember what they wrote on the explanation and all that kind of good investigative stuff. So this is a great feature in POBITS that's going to help you deal with everything that's just in the questionnaire itself without really doing any footwork at this point. So let's go back now to the investigation itself. I'm not going to show you all of the other investigative areas. You can imagine what they look like. Just a reminder that POBITS was built using the California post-PHS form and processes, because California publishes a very comprehensive manual on their whole process, and it just made a great tool for building POBITS. So now let's look at a few other features in POBITS. Under the View menu, for example, we've got a few things to look at. Now, as I've shown you through the system, we went into an investigative area, then we went into a subject like a parent or a reference and opened these things up and dug. And we don't want you to have to do that. We want easier navigability. One of the things you're going to do is contacts. Just like we went to concerns, where we can see all of the concerns in the system, we can go to contacts and we can see all of the contacts in the system. So rather than navigate all through the system, the contacts list gives you a list of all contactable subjects within the system. Now, not all of these are invitable. There's a difference. For example, schools are not invitable because they're not going to respond to an email and they're not going to tell you anything. But you may end up calling them or checking with the registrar or doing something like that, in which case you can mark it done, say, okay, that's verified information. I'm going to mark it done. It's going to turn green. I'm going to move on. Many of these are people, such as different references, be they personal references, neighbors, employers, landlords, etc. So now you're at the phase of the investigation where you're making contact with all these people. You're gathering questionnaires from them. If you choose to interview them, you can do so, and ultimately your comments will round up to being what they are. Here's James Gibson. He's the father. We looked at this record just a second ago, or I should say just earlier, and so here we are. We've looked at this record before, and this is it. So here you can see how all of the contacts within this case are all aggregated onto this one window, and this becomes your daily work list when you're on this phase of the investigation, when you're working with references. So looking also, we see a few more things in here. We have red flags. I've talked about red flags. You can plop them down all over the place. You can put them on people, on schools, on any number of things. But the point is, it's hard to know exactly where you put them because POBITS has a certain amount of complexity. But as you can see, we can aggregate them all right here and just sort of pop them open a little bit and see, oh yeah, what were these things? You could go back in and deal with them, clear them. You don't have to, or you could leave them there for the next reviewers or anything you like. But the bottom line is, when you're done with your investigation, you can click on red flags, and you can see where all of your red flags were laid in the course of the investigation. There is also a case journal. As investigators, it's very important to keep a tight journal and track of everything that's going on in POBITS, when you invited people, when you interviewed people, all these kinds of things. And in POBITS, we have a place for that, only POBITS does it automatically. This is an example of a case journal that POBITS is keeping for you in the background, and it's down at the, shall we say, field level or attribute level, where POBITS is telling you exactly what happened, where, for example, a particular attribute was changed from one value to another value by a certain person at a particular date and time. Very handy, and it's good for reviewing things and, when needed, validating that things got done. And then lastly is questionnaires. All of the questionnaires in POBITS are aggregated right here, so every questionnaire that was completed by a reference is put onto this list, and you can see them all right here, so you can jump in and look at one at any time. And going back to the case file, a few more things we can show you under Actions is that here's where you can go and update your executive summary. Here's where you can go and invite all contacts I showed you a moment ago. POBITS has a system for form letters. Form letters are a very simple concept. You create a document external to POBITS using Microsoft Word, and you embed little tags like last name, first name, this sort of thing. And there's a help topic in the help system to show you how to create those tags. And you can make any number of letters for any number of purposes, and they all then have the candidate's information in there. You might have first name, last name, date of birth, and any number of other things. And then you can can simply create one on the fly. I won't demonstrate that. It's the kind of thing I'll show in a webinar or something like that if you want to see it. I think you can envision what it is. Then there's attachments. You can attach anything to the case file that you want to attach. You know, for example, here I've attached a sample fingerprint card, just so you see kind of what that would be. So that's a document that's attached to the case. All of those documents come out in the final background investigation report that I talked about earlier. Other actions are reports. And this is where you export the investigation report. That's the single PDF file that has all aspects of the case in it. It takes a few minutes to generate. I don't need to demonstrate it here. If you're working with me, I've probably already sent you a sample of one of these, and so you can get an idea for it. It should run anywhere from 100 to 200 pages, depending on how much stuff you've put in there. The rest of these reports are all reports that are also included in this master report. You just may have the desire to have one of these as like a one-off. For example, a narrative summary report is a single report that just has a summary of all of your narratives in there, and you may have reason to produce this report all by itself outside of anything else. So that's kind of a brief walkthrough of the main areas of the investigation or the case within POBITS. Let's go ahead and show you a few other things that are not relevant to the case, and it will only take a second. First thing is, you can see I've opened up a number of tabs in here. I can have any number of tabs open. They can be different candidates, different cases, different items of any kind. So I can have a lot of work going on up here. If I ever need to just reset the view, this button right here will reset the window to a stage or a state as if I just logged on to the system. One of the other features about POBITS is its help system, and whether you're a investigator or a candidate or a reference, you all have access to the help system. And the help system is very handy because this is a good way to communicate directly with us to either support a ticket or submit a ticket, or to go to the support center. And the support centers, you know, your basic kind of a support center. You can search on a term here, and it would bring up possibly an article. There's a whole lot of articles in the system that you can look at, and you can also just submit a ticket. So if you go to submit a new support ticket, you get a simple screen here, and let's just do it under here. So you get a simple screen for submitting a support ticket. We love when you submit these because it helps us keep track of whatever your request is, so feel free to do it all that you want. So that's a good overview of the POBITS system, I think, focusing on candidates and cases and a few other items within the system. There's a lot more to show you, and I would do it in a webinar. I think it's worth your time to have a webinar, whether it's for training purposes or to make an evaluation of the system a little bit further. But what you've seen here is a very good overview of how the system works, and I've only shown it to you from the investigator standpoint. During a webinar or during your own trial, you can see how the system looks from the standpoint of a candidate. And then I would also point out to you that there is a YouTube channel called POBITS, and if you go there and look for it, you'll find several videos like this one that I keep there, and there's a number of different videos for different things, some small, some long, to train you or keep you informed, or just to give you a quick update on something that's going on in the system. And I hope you visit there a lot. So that completes the overview of the system. I hope that if you're not a POBITS subscriber, you will consider engaging with me, having a webinar, and seeing if the system is right for you. If you are a user, I hope that this has been informative, and if there's still other topics you'd like me to cover, send me a note and I'll whip up a video on it so we can have a nice video on that for people to watch. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy using POBITS. For more information about POBITS, go to www.pobits.com.